Have you ever felt that certain desires and joys have an expiration date as we age? Today, we're diving into a story that shatters that myth, a story about embracing every stage of life with a vibrant spirit. In this video, we follow Dona Clara, an 85-year-old woman who defied expectations, reclaiming her sense of self and discovering the depth of joy and intimacy in her later years. Stay with us to the end because this journey will challenge everything you thought you knew about aging, love, and self-worth. Trust me, you'll find yourself looking at life from an entirely new perspective. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I encourage you to click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on today's topic. If you enjoy the content, please comment 1 below. If it doesn't resonate with you, leave a 0. Your feedback is crucial as it helps me create better videos that align with your interests. Now, let's get started. Today, we're about to embark on an intimate journey, a journey through one of the most powerful yet rarely spoken facets of human experience. Today, I invite you to immerse yourself in a story that shatters long-standing taboos and dives deep into the soul of what it truly means to embrace oneself at every stage of life. This is the story of Dona Clara, an 85-year-old woman who chose to reclaim her desires, her body, and her spirit in ways that defy the silent, often suffocating expectations society imposes upon us. It's a story that reminds us that the pursuit of joy, pleasure, and self-care has no deadline. That all of us, regardless of age, are worthy of feeling truly alive in our skin and connected to our hearts. Dona Clara, a revered soul in her small village, has lived a life full of bittersweet memories and rich experiences. She is cherished not only for the serenity that graces her voice, but for the rare peace that radiates from every syllable she speaks. Over her long life, she has endured losses that would break many, raised children with a steady resilience, and learned to carve out a solitary yet profoundly fulfilling existence since her husband passed away over 20 years ago. And yet, despite the trials life has placed upon her, she has preserved a radiant spark, a spark that speaks of her unyielding spirit and boundless curiosity. From her youth, Dona Clara was the friend everyone sought, a confidant whose wisdom felt like a balm to the heart. Now, in her later years, she has become a treasured figure, a pillar of counsel and comfort. Whether sitting in the park, her gentle laughter blending with the rustle of the trees, or sipping tea in the town square, her presence is magnetic. People of all ages, from the very young to the old, find solace in her words. There's a rare quality in her outlook on life, a blend of hard-earned wisdom and an openness to new perspectives, that makes her an anchor for those around her. Yet, Dona Clara's journey to self-acceptance has not been an easy one. There was a time when her own feelings of desire and self-worth seemed out of place, clouded by the unspoken rules of a society that suggests aging women should quietly fade into the background. She too was once wrapped in layers of self-doubt, torn between the vibrant feelings in her heart and the hushed voices of convention. But as the years passed, she found the courage to reconnect with the parts of herself she had hidden away. She came to understand that passion, tenderness, and self-love do not vanish with the passing years. In fact, they become more precious, more urgent, and more authentic. One warm afternoon, as she settled into her favorite spot under the ancient tree in the square, a young man from the village named Andres approached her with a timid, almost reverent gaze. Andres was a young soul brimming with questions, searching for answers that no one else dared to discuss with him. He had grown up in a world filled with strict notions about life stages and limitations, what is appropriate and what is forbidden, especially when it comes to matters of the heart and body. Andres had always believed that passion, love, and sensuality belonged only to the young, as if they were privileges to be revoked with age. As he sat down beside Dona Clara, sharing his concerns and curiosities, he encountered a perspective that shifted his understanding entirely. He listened, transfixed, as she spoke with gentle strength, dismantling the myths he had carried all his life. With grace and wisdom, she explained that love, intimacy, and pleasure are not bound by time, nor are they the exclusive property of youth. Instead, these feelings grow deeper, richer, and perhaps even more profound with age. In Dona Clara's words, Andres saw a vision of life that honored every stage of being, a vision that celebrated the fullness of human experience. In that moment, the air around them seemed to hold a quiet magic. Andres understood that he was witnessing a rare truth, the beauty of a life lived with courage, authenticity, and unyielding self-love. Through Dona Clara, he glimpsed the extraordinary power that lies within each of us to embrace our desires, to cherish our bodies, and to honor our spirits, no matter where we are on our journey. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the village, Dona Clara's words hung in the air, a reminder that our worth, our joy, and our right to feel alive are timeless gifts, ones we can claim whenever we choose. Recently, however, something within Andres had started to challenge those assumptions he had so long taken as truth. He had stumbled upon an article discussing sexuality in old age, a topic that he had never even considered relevant. It left him unsettled, confused, and if he was honest, somewhat uncomfortable. The idea that older people still experienced sexual desires felt strange to him. How could that be? Weren't such things supposed to fade with the years, overtaken by wisdom, family, and memories rather than the desires of the body? With no one else to ask and a lingering sense of curiosity, he thought of the one person he knew would give him an honest, compassionate answer. Dona Clara, the village elder who held a rare understanding of life's complexities. Despite his embarrassment, Andres felt a strange confidence in approaching her. He knew deep down that Dona Clara would listen without judgment, as she always did, and that she could somehow illuminate even the murkiest of questions. So, gathering all the courage he could muster, he approached her one quiet afternoon, finding her seated under her favorite tree, eyes lifted to the sky, as if communing with the clouds themselves. Her peaceful gaze seemed to reach beyond the present, touching the wisdom of countless moments she had lived. As he neared her, he felt his heart pounding, and a knot formed in his stomach. Clearing his throat, he took a deep breath and finally broke the silence. "Dona Clara, may I ask you something?" His voice was laced with hesitation, his fingers nervously fiddling as he forced the words out. He could feel the warmth rising in his cheeks, embarrassed and anxious all at once. Without missing a beat, Dona Clara turned to him, her face lighting up with that familiar serene smile she always wore, a smile that made even the most daunting questions seem safe to ask. "Of course, my child," she said, her voice soft and inviting. "You know you can ask me anything. I am always here to listen." Her gaze was steady, as if to reassure him that there was nothing he could say that would surprise or unsettle her. Andres took a seat beside her, unable to meet her eyes just yet. He looked down at his hands, fiddling with his fingers, searching for the courage to continue. After a deep breath, he began. I read something recently. It was about sexuality in old age." His cheeks turned a deeper shade of red, and his voice wavered, but he pushed through. "I had never really thought about it before, but the article made me wonder. Is it normal to still have those feelings when you're older?" His words hung in the air, vulnerable and raw, the question carrying a weight he had been holding tightly. To his surprise, Dona Clara let out a soft, understanding laugh, not mocking or dismissive, but warm, as if she had heard this question many times before and knew just the response that could ease his heart. She reached out a gentle hand and placed it on his, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Ah, Andres," she began with a chuckle. "Who decides what's normal, really?" Her voice was soothing, carrying a mix of humor and kindness. "You'd be surprised how many young people like you ask themselves these questions, but shy away from asking them openly." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in, her gaze resting kindly upon him. "The truth is, our bodies and hearts remain full of life no matter our age. Those feelings you wonder about don't disappear with years. They only become richer, deeper, and often more meaningful. You see, Andres, pleasure, love, and even desire, they are all part of the human experience, regardless of age. Life doesn't place limits on joy or connection, and neither should we." A gentle silence followed as Andres let her words wash over him. In that moment, he realized he was hearing not only an answer to his question, but a beautiful revelation about life itself. He could feel the layers of misconception unravel, replaced by a sense of acceptance and newfound understanding. With her warm words, Dona Clara had given him permission to see life through a more compassionate lens, one that honored the fullness of human emotion at every stage. André sat quietly beside her, feeling as if he had discovered a profound truth about life's journey, that it was not bound by the rules he once believed, and that, perhaps, it was a journey meant to be lived with an open heart at every age. Andrés lifted his gaze, a wave of relief washing over him at Dona Clara's gentle, understanding response. He felt the embarrassment dissolve, replaced by a curiosity he hadn't expected, a desire to know more about this unspoken aspect of life. If you are still watching this video, and find these lessons useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Dona Clara continued, her voice calm and steady. The truth is, Andrés, that sexuality doesn't simply vanish with age. The body, yes, it changes. Our appearance shifts, our energy may ebb and flow differently, but those desires don't disappear. In some ways, they become more profound, shaped by a lifetime of experiences, memories, and emotions. They are a quieter kind of desire, a little softer, maybe more reflective. When I reached a certain age, I felt as though I should silence those feelings, as if they had no place in an older woman's life. But over the years, I discovered that such beliefs were misguided. Andrés leaned in, intrigued, feeling comfortable and drawn into her story. Would you mind sharing what that experience was like for you? He asked, his tone gentle, a newfound respect evident in his eyes. Dona Clara smiled, her expression a mix of nostalgia and wisdom. She looked into the distance, her gaze lingering as if watching scenes from her past replay before her eyes. Of course, Andrés, she replied softly. I'll tell you something few know, but I believe it may help you understand how beautiful this part of life can be. Taking a deep breath, she began, several years ago, I found myself at a crossroads when my children had all moved away, and my husband, my partner of more than 40 years, had passed. At first, I thought I was ready for this stage. I had been preparing, in a way, for the silence. But no one truly prepares you for solitude. She paused, eyes softening, her mind wandering to memories that seemed as real as the moment she spoke them. I remember how the house, once filled with the laughter of children, the hum of conversation, the comforting presence of my husband, had become silent, almost hauntingly so. Day after day, I found myself surrounded only by the echoes of those memories. I could hear their voices in the empty rooms, see my husband's warm smile in every corner. And while I cherished those memories, I began to feel an ache inside, a void I couldn't ignore, as if something essential within me had been locked away. Andrés listened intently, caught up in the honesty and depth of her words. He could feel the weight of her experience, the rawness of her journey into herself. So, she continued, her voice growing softer, I spent many long hours reflecting, searching for meaning and ways to fill the emptiness. I began to question so many things about my own body and my own right to still feel alive, to feel whole. I remember wondering if it was even acceptable for me, at my age, to think of myself as anything other than a widow or a mother. Society, though it doesn't always say it directly, seems to whisper that older women should leave such desires behind, that our bodies, once marked by age, are no longer deserving of love, of touch, of admiration. And the saddest part, I began to believe it. I started to tell myself that I should just accept this quiet resignation as the way of things. She sighed deeply, as if shedding a weight from her soul, her eyes still distant, lost in the reverie of her journey. Andrés could sense the courage it took to share this part of herself. He felt humbled, deeply moved by the vulnerability she allowed him to witness. But then, she said, her voice gaining a strength that belied her age, I realized that those were someone else's beliefs, not mine. I decided to embrace a truth that I had known, somewhere deep inside, all along. That pleasure, self-love, and the simple joy of existing in one's own skin are not privileges meant to fade with age. They are the heartbeats of our humanity, reminders that we are alive, no matter how many years we have lived. Her words lingered in the air, filling the silence with a powerful sense of revelation. Andres felt his own assumptions dissolving, as if Dona Clara's wisdom had reached into his soul, reshaping the way he viewed not only her but himself and his own journey through life. In her honesty, he saw a path he had not known existed, a path that led to a more compassionate understanding of age, desire, and the timeless beauty of living fully. Andres sat beside her, captivated, absorbing each word as if they were precious insights into a world he'd never imagined. Here was Dona Clara, a woman he had always respected, sharing a side of herself that he hadn't known existed. He felt humbled, even honored, to be trusted with such vulnerability. She continued, her voice steady yet filled with a tenderness that drew him in. At first, Andres, I struggled. These feelings, these thoughts, they didn't align with the image I had of what an elderly woman should be. I felt guilty, almost as if I were defying an unspoken rule. Who was I, a woman in her 70s, to feel desire, to yearn for the gentle thrill of intimacy? But something within me refused to be silenced. So, I gathered my courage and shared these feelings with my doctor, someone I trusted deeply. A warm look of empathy softened Andres' face. He could only imagine how daunting that conversation must have been. Here was Dona Clara, with her heart laid bare, challenging every societal expectation she'd grown up with. She looked at me, Dona Clara said, a faint smile playing on her lips, with a kindness I'll never forget. And then she told me something that shifted my whole perspective. Clara, she said, sexuality is not tied to youth. It's a part of who we are, no matter our age. It evolves, yes, but it remains. The important thing is to honor what your body's telling you. Listen to it, respect it, and above all, never feel ashamed of what you feel. In that moment, her words wrapped around me like a warm embrace, inviting me to see myself with acceptance rather than judgment. The relief of that memory seemed to fill her with peace as she continued. With her encouragement, I began to explore my own intimacy once again, but this time, with a newfound sense of compassion for myself. I'll admit, the journey wasn't without its challenges. At first, I felt awkward, even uncertain. How should I feel about this? Was it truly acceptable? But, little by little, I discovered that these feelings were not only normal, they were essential. In reconnecting with myself, I found a path back to self-love and acceptance. Self-pleasure, something I had left behind years ago, became a way to reconnect with my body, to remind myself that I am still here, still deserving of tenderness and care. Andres sat in awe, feeling as though he were witnessing a beautiful transformation unfold before him. There was a wisdom in her words, a depth that seemed to touch his very soul. Over time, she continued, I started seeing my body differently. My wrinkles, my scars, the lines that told of laughter and sorrow, of love and loss. I began to embrace them as symbols of my journey. They weren't flaws, they were stories. And I began to understand that my body, even in its age, held a beauty that went beyond appearances. I felt lighter, more at peace, as if the simple act of accepting myself had unlocked a new kind of freedom. Her eyes shone with a gentle resilience as she spoke. Self-pleasure became, for me, a small ritual of self-care, an intimate moment where I could focus on nothing but my own sense of being. It wasn't just about pleasure, it was about gratitude, for the life I had lived and for the years I still hoped to embrace. I slept better, the knots of anxiety that had gathered in my heart loosened, and I began to see each day as a precious gift. Embracing my desires, honoring my body in all its forms, it wasn't defiance. It was a quiet declaration of self-worth, a celebration of life. Andres felt a swell of admiration rise within him. He could see that Dona Clara's journey was not just about sexuality or desire. It was about reclaiming herself, finding power and peace within her own skin. Through her story, he glimpsed a profound truth, that life's essence, its joy, its beauty, and even its longing, didn't diminish with age. If anything, they deepened, becoming richer, more meaningful. Dona Clara's words stayed with him long after that conversation. In her quiet strength, he found a lesson he hadn't expected, that each stage of life brings its own treasures, its own revelations, if only we're brave enough to embrace them. In that moment, Andres understood that the wisdom of age was not in the silencing of desires, but in the courage to honor them openly, fully, with all the grace that life bestows. Andres nodded, processing each of Dona Clara's words, feeling the gravity of her wisdom settle into his heart. He realized that her story was about far more than desire or sexuality. It was about embracing oneself, wholly and without reservation, even in a world that often discourages such courage. It was about seeing one's body, mind, and soul as something precious, worthy of care and love at every age. Sensing his reflection, Dona Clara gently took his hand, her touch warm and steady, a reassurance that he wasn't alone in grappling with these questions. She seemed to know just what he needed, as if her words were unfolding with him, in step with his own thoughts. Her eyes, deep and kind, held the sort of wisdom that only a life well lived could impart. "Andres, my child," she said softly, her voice wrapped in warmth and understanding, "what I hope you take from this is a truth far beyond my own story. I want you to understand that sexuality, desire, and pleasure are not things we lose as we grow older. They're gifts, woven into the fabric of who we are, from the moment we take our first breath until the day we take our last. Society may tell us to leave them behind after a certain age, but that belief, well, it's just a myth, a cage made from the fear of the unknown, a fear of life's natural cycles." Andres held her gaze, captivated by the wisdom radiating from her. He felt a new clarity wash over him as her words took root. She was revealing not only her journey but a perspective that challenged so much of what he had accepted as true. In her, he saw courage that spoke to something deep within himself, a courage that maybe, someday, he could learn to cultivate too. "What truly matters," she continued, "is how we feel about ourselves. It doesn't matter if there are people who don't understand, who judge or criticize. All that matters is whether we can look within, listen to our own hearts, and give ourselves the respect, compassion, and care we deserve. The joy we feel, the pleasure we allow ourselves, they have no expiration date. Society will whisper many things, Andres. It will tell you when to start and stop feeling. It will tell you to be quiet or to fit a mold. But the only truth worth holding on to is the one that resonates within you." Her gaze softened further, a look of boundless compassion brightening her eyes as she spoke. "In my life, Andres, I have learned that the greatest act of love we can offer ourselves is gentleness. Gentleness with our emotions, our bodies, our desires. Self-pleasure, you see, is just one part of this self-love. Like any other form of care, it connects us with who we are at the core. It's a way to release the burdens we accumulate, to soothe ourselves, and above all, to remember that we are still here, still alive, still worthy of joy. And it's not just about physical pleasure but about finding peace within, about reclaiming the power to feel good in our own skin, no matter how old we are. If you are still watching this video, and find these lessons useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me." Andres was transfixed. The way she spoke was like poetry, weaving a tapestry of truths he had never thought about. In her vulnerability, he saw strength. In her story, he saw his own unasked questions reflected. Her words unlocked something in him, a realization that the journey towards self-acceptance was ongoing, never truly finished, and as meaningful at 85 as it was at any other age. Dona Clara continued, her words flowing with the grace of someone who had spent a lifetime learning and unlearning, finding her own truth beneath the layers of expectation. "When I began to see my body as a home for my soul, rather than just a vessel passing through life, everything shifted. My wrinkles, my scars, the lines etched from laughter and sorrow, they stopped being flaws I had to hide. They became the stories of my journey, symbols of all I had experienced. And instead of hiding them, I found pride in them. My body, even with all its changes, has a beauty that goes beyond what people see on the surface." Her voice took on a gentle strength, the wisdom of her words carrying a transformative power. "Self-pleasure, for me, became a private ritual of self-care. It wasn't about indulgence or self-gratification, It was about taking a moment to honor myself. In those quiet, sacred moments, I connected with myself, found peace, released tension, and remembered that, despite everything, my body was still my own, a place of love and respect. It reminded me of life's beautiful rhythm, the feeling of being alive. Those moments became a way to give myself the compassion I so often gave others, to hold space for my own joy. Andres felt an intense admiration well up within him. Her words were not only about the body, they were about learning to cherish life in its entirety. She was speaking of a kind of freedom, one he could feel radiating from her, and he began to understand that her journey was a kind of liberation. Her story had opened a window into a future where he, too, might find the strength to live without fear, without shame, embracing all that he was and would become. With a small, gentle smile, Dona Clara squeezed his hand. "So, dear Andres," she said, her voice wrapping him in warmth, "never fear your desires. Never be ashamed of what you feel. Life is a collection of moments, and the relationship you nurture with yourself, with your own body, is one of the most sacred and beautiful relationships you'll ever have. Learn to listen to yourself, to honor what your heart and body tell you, to find love within yourself. Don't let the world's fears keep you from knowing the fullness of who you are. This journey, Andres, it's one of the greatest gifts you'll give yourself. It can fill your heart with peace, respect, and a joy that only comes from within." Her words hung in the air like a blessing, and Andres felt a shift within him, as though she had passed him a torch to carry forward in his own life. Her story would remain with him, a guiding light, a reminder that each of us deserves to live fully, unburdened by fear or shame, honoring every part of ourselves as we walk through life. In Dona Clara's wisdom, he found not only answers to his questions, but a glimpse of the freedom that comes from embracing one's truth, no matter how old we are. Andres looked at her, feeling a surge of gratitude well up in his heart. In seeking answers to his questions, he hadn't expected to uncover such profound wisdom, a gift he knew would shape his perspective on life. Her words had ignited a new light within him, a sense of freedom that he hadn't felt before. Smiling, he spoke with deep sincerity. "Thank you, Dona Clara. You've truly given me a lot to think about, and I feel grateful for this chance to understand myself a bit better." Dona Clara returned his smile, her eyes reflecting the gentle satisfaction of knowing she had passed on something meaningful. "There's no need to thank me, my child," she said softly. "Life teaches us many things, but perhaps the most valuable lesson of all is to listen to our own hearts and honor what they tell us, regardless of what others may think." Pausing, she gazed into the distance, a glimmer of wisdom lighting up her face. "Andres," she began, her voice carrying a tone of gentle urgency, "the most important thing I've learned in all my years is that self-respect is fundamental. We often find ourselves feeling uncertain or even ashamed, particularly when society tries to convince us that certain feelings or desires are inappropriate as we age. But let me tell you, Andres, your desires are a natural, essential part of being human, no matter how many years you've lived. They're nothing to be ashamed of. They're expressions of life itself." Her voice grew softer, almost reverent, as she continued. "I remember a particular day that changed everything for me. I was alone, feeling the weight of my insecurities, and I sat in front of the mirror with all my vulnerabilities laid bare. That day, I decided to set aside my fears and make peace with my body. I let myself explore what made me feel good, without judgment or guilt, and I realized that self-care, even in its most intimate forms, isn't a luxury. It's a necessity, a way to show love to ourselves. It was a pivotal moment, a declaration of self-worth that taught me more than any advice or societal rule ever could." She gave his hand a gentle squeeze, her expression filled with a deep, compassionate understanding. "Andres, remember that you should never feel guilty for wanting to embrace life fully, for cherishing your body, and for building meaningful connections with others. There's nothing wrong in seeking pleasure, comfort, and intimacy, provided you approach these things with respect, both for yourself and those you care about. Life is a journey, one filled with opportunities to learn about yourself, to uncover what truly makes your soul come alive." Her words enveloped him, leaving him in awe of the profound truth she was sharing. He felt himself expanding in her presence, his heart and mind opening to new ideas, shedding old judgments he didn't even know he held. Allow yourself to seek out the information you need, to be open about your questions, and to surround yourself with people who support you in exploring life's richness, she encouraged, her voice brimming with tenderness. Each stage of life, Andres, brings new ways to love and care for ourselves. What matters most is that you feel whole and at peace within yourself. That peace, well, it's worth more than any external approval. Her words lingered between them, resonating deeply within him. Andres could feel that he was not just being invited to explore his own truth, but to honor it as a lifelong companion. He knew that this wisdom would shape how he approached each chapter of his life, each relationship, and, perhaps most importantly, his relationship with himself. The story of Dona Clara teaches us that our sexuality, our desires, and our need for intimacy are fundamental parts of who we are. Far from being hidden, they deserve to be understood and cherished as expressions of our innermost essence. In our culture, old age is often draped in tones of resignation or sadness, as if the years silently take away our right to enjoy life to its fullest. But through Dona Clara's eyes, we glimpse a new reality. Every passing year is an invitation to embrace our authenticity, to explore our desires, and to cultivate a life woven with love, self-compassion, and respect. So, let this be an invitation to reflect on your own relationship with self-care and self-acceptance. What beliefs or judgments might you have inherited that could be quietly holding you back? How can you start honoring your needs and desires without shame, knowing that they're part of your deepest self? Dona Clara's story is a call to each of us, a reminder that the path to loving oneself and embracing all that we are is a journey without age limits, one that grows richer and more meaningful with every step we take. As we close, take a moment to reflect. What have you learned from Dona Clara's journey? Is there something that touched you deeply, or perhaps something you're inspired to bring into your own life? Share your thoughts below. Tell us one lesson you'll carry forward from her story. And if this video resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate life, growth, and self-love at every age. Thank you for watching.